Hello, welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, I'm Jamie B. I read a ton of books, and this is wrapping up at least the print books that I finished in May and April, because I need to hand them off to my sister. So after this video is done, I can hand those books off without worrying about whether I put them in a video yet. So that's what we're doing tonight. So this is just going to be kind of chatting about books, as the title suggests. It's a book chat. And yeah, I've finished a lot of books that I've not made it into videos yet. If I already covered the book in a previous video for May, I'm not going to worry about it in here unless I really want to. But this is just the ones that I didn't get to before we got to June, and now we're in June, and I've finished 4 books so far in June. I know I'm slipping. It's the 5th, and I've only finished 4, so getting a bit slow. I know. But I have several books ongoing right now, so I should finish probably 3 books kind of at the same time. An arc, a print book, and a audiobook. So that's pretty normal. Anyway, for this video, we're going to talk print books primarily, and I may do a separate video talking about the arcs that I finished that I didn't get to talking about in previous May videos, and the audiobooks that I got from the library that I don't have in print. So, print books only, keeps it from being like 5 hours long. Let's look at some books. All right, this first batch of books, I kept trying to make a 10-book video of them, and either I would have issues with StreamYard or I would have issues with somebody interrupting in a really bad spot that I didn't catch, or the lighting would change and it would just look awful, or it was never meant to be. So I made several versions of these 10 books in a video that none of them made it to being published. One almost did, but so we still have some books to chat about that should have been in a separate video. So I've been meaning to read something by Carol Shields because the Carol Shields Prize is obviously named to honor Carol Shields, and I have several. So I finished Unless by Carol Shields. This one is about a middle-aged, middle-class lady who's trying to write and publish a book, and she's an author. She's also doing other things. And oh yeah, she also has an adult daughter who has rejected modern society and is living on the street despite having options, like lots of options to not be homeless. So she's trying to deal with all that. I found this one interesting because a friend of a family member has a family member that's doing this. So not someone I know. I've met them once. But just a connection. But I know a family that is dealing with this, where an adult child in this family has become homeless just because that's what they want to do. They don't have to be. They had a lease that was fully paid up by their family, so they had no reason to not live where they were living. They had a car and all these other things that would make their life pretty normal looking, and they just dropped it all and they're living on the streets. And so this is a quandary that in real life I am familiar with. So I found this book interesting for that. And I enjoyed it. It wasn't super memorable aside from that personal connection, that odd similarity that until I met this one family I'd never encountered before. And I've met people that are kind of sort of homeless by choice in the music scene, but that's a bit different. Then they're musicians doing what they think is the musician lifestyle. And depending on their age, sometimes that includes being anti-authoritarian and forging their own path, even though if they talked to anybody else for very long, they'd find out that they're doing what a lot of people have already done, and it's not exactly novel. I've had a lot of those conversations. Anyway. So anyway, I liked the book. I can see why Carol Shields is an author that people like. This is still the only one I've read by her, so I don't have a really good idea of what her range is, but I enjoyed it well enough to read more. So I recommend it. I usually think that I like John Banville. I think really I like the idea that I like John Banville because he's on lists. Because it was just kind of okay. So this is The Blue Guitar by John Banville. Banville won the Booker Prize, not for this book though. And this is not one that a lot of people talk about, that I've seen anyway. Jog my memory here of what it's even about. Our narrator is Oliver Otway Orme. OOO is their initials. He's a painter and a thief, but he only steals as kind of an performance art, kind of an affectation, which is how he explains his running off with his friend's wife. He's done an artistic theft of his friend's wife, and like that's supposed to make it okay or something. Got a kitty doing a pole dance in the background. This is perfect. Lovely. That, by the way, is Lioness, my semi-feral house cat. She's very cute, but she's not a pettable or snuggly cat. She just likes to hang out. And on top, we have Jesper the Womcat. So, couple felines here. Yeah, hi. Oh, and there's a moth, which you might be able to see when it catches the light. They are both hunters. Anyway, back to the books. Yeah, so this one was just okay. His writing is good. And if you had to read something for like a book report, it's that kind of literary fiction where there'd be plenty to say about it. But it was just okay. I read The Sea and The Untouchable. I have Shroud. And one of my sisters wants me to read the Newton Letter and the Book of Evidence. So I don't know if I have those. I might have the Book of Evidence. But anyway, Banville's just one of those that he's on the 1001 Books You Must Read Before You Die list for The Untouchable, I think. But he's just one of those that I kind of think I ought to read Banville, so I do. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not reading the right ones yet, and I'll read the next one of his backlist and I'll be like, that's the book. I love him now. I don't know. But I don't dislike him. It's just all of his books have been forgettable so far. Anyway, moving on. Next book is also about an artist. The Gravity of Birds is about an artist who, early on in his career, he's a young man. He meets two girls who are enough younger than him that it's a problem, but he is a younger man anyway. The age difference isn't creepy, at least. But he seduces or is seduced by the older sister, which is not surprising. She's at a stage in her teenage life where she really wants to flex her femininity and show that she can get some men of her own, that, you know, she's got it. I know women like this that had a phase as teenagers doing this sort of thing. I did not. So it was not personally relatable, but I know people. And the sister, the younger sister, is more like me, and she's not really doing that. But she's still jealous of the attention that her sister is getting, and she recognizes that the relationship is a bit creepy. So that it's kind of a complex dynamic among these three people. And then fast forward to several decades later, the artist is an aging man with health problems. He's in a nursing home. I think he's in a nursing home. Anyway, he has carers, and he doesn't have full mobility or full control over his activities. So he's an older man, and he's authorized a painting to be sold, but only if the other paintings that belong in this sequence of paintings go with it as a set. So his agent has to go and track down these girls to figure out what happened to these other paintings. And of course, he doesn't have much to go on because the artist, meanwhile, has a stroke and is not communicating for a while. But this is how to get money for the estate that's badly needed and stuff. So anyway, it's also about an artist in a relationship with women that maybe are not who he's supposed to have a relationship with. But this time, at least, it's not an affair with a married woman. So that's okay. But it's an affair with a teenager instead, which is still problematic. Haven't read a lot of books lately with artists that have normal relationships. Although the writer in Unless is kind of an artist, and she's married with kids and totally normal, or trying to be. So maybe that works. And the only one by a man in this stack is the Banville one. So we've got two women and a man so far as authors. Next one, though, is another dude, Perrick O'Donnell, the maker of swans. I just encountered a quote somewhere on BookTube by Perrick O'Donnell. I'm trying to remember now who said that author name. I was like, oh, I just read him. Anyway, the maker of swans should have been a 5-star book for me. And it just kind of never got there. It started out feeling like maybe the kind of creepy that Pan's Labyrinth is, which would be great. I love that kind of creepy. But it would hint that that's where it was going and then just stall out. And then build up another anticipation of being creepy and then stall again. So we have a nonverbal probably autistic girl who has a talent for memorizing text and then writing it out from memory later.
You would. Hi. Yeah. Hi.
So she also seems to have some sort of magical talent. And she's isolated in this weird manor house with these creepy adults that we're not really sure how they're related to her. And yeah, maybe they're the good guys and maybe they're not. And maybe she's magical and maybe she's not. And the maybe they're not part, this book needed to pick something and stick with it. Either we're doing literary about this girl who's caught up in an adult world that she has very little agency in, and whatever they want to do with that, or we're doing magical realism where there's magic. And it felt like the author didn't want to actually commit to doing magic in the book, which was unfortunate because it was necessary in order to fulfill the promise that was made by the first third of the book. Anyway, I had hopes. I actually really liked the cover on this one. It's the yin yang symbol and swans. It's just great. So that's actually what I picked it for, but it was disappointing. Then we have another book by a woman. This author I have read before. Jane Hamilton is a skilled author. She tends to write about kind of everyday situations and people. So in this case, we have a farming family with an orchard, but the family has kind of moved away from that lifestyle. We're in the last bastion of the orchard farming lifestyle. And even that is fading. We have two kids, a boy and a girl, and the boy doesn't really have any interest in the orchard. And then we have the girl who thinks the orchard should be hers. She's dedicated to it. She loves it, but her family is conventional enough that they want her to marry off, and they really don't see any point in her getting the orchard because she's just going to marry somewhere outside the family anyway. And then they might as well not keep the orchard anyway. So it's kind of that sort of dynamic. In a small, kind of central United States little town, maybe a bit southern, but it's just kind of a farming community. But in an area that's starting to urbanize enough that a lot of the plots of agricultural land are going to housing developments instead of being maintained as agricultural land. And I've certainly looked at that topic before from an ecological perspective, because in land use planning, it's a bit peculiar that we, as a society, allow our good agricultural land with the good soil and the good positioning for agriculture to be bought up and used for urban building instead of being maintained as agricultural space. We actually lose a lot of productivity in the agricultural sector by that choice. So it's tangential to that discussion. And I liked it. It was a good book. I found the main character really annoying. If she had been willing to go to college and come back with a degree where she could demonstrate that she has these assets under her belt that she can use towards running the orchard, her family might have let her keep the orchard. But she was so dead set on not leaving at all that she kind of shot herself in the foot. So, I didn't like her. I thought she was really annoying. Her solutions to her problems are really childish and really annoying. Yeah, none of the characters are that likable, but you can still sympathize with the situation they find themselves in, even if the characters are not very nice. Anyway, so that was good. I really liked Hamilton's A Map of the World. That was the first one I read by her. I could have sworn I've read something else by her. I know I own more. Oh, I finished the Book of Ruth last year, which was okay. I didn't like it as well as A Map of the World. And I have A Short History of a Prince, Disobedience, and probably something that came out after this one, because I know I have one more that's not in that list. Anyway, highly recommend Jane Hamilton. She's really good. Similar in vibe to Carol Shields. So if you like Shields, you might like Hamilton. Next up, we have Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. This is magical realism in which there are doors that pop up randomly in interesting places where you go through it and you're in someplace else. And it reminded me of The Stone Raft by Jose Saramago in the way the magical realism happens. And it's really more about what the people do to reorder society around this new state of being that they find themselves in. That at any time, people can just walk through one of these doors and pop up somewhere else. So you're not stuck somewhere you don't want to be. So if I really want to be in Iceland, maybe a door will appear somewhere where I'm at, especially if I'm feeling stuck for some reason. And I can step through it, and now I'm in Iceland. It'd be great. I don't know what I would do in Iceland because I still am not really making any headway in Icelandic, which is kind of necessary to move to Iceland. Anyway, but you get the picture. So everybody can go where they would rather be, which means societies are not as static as they used to be. So planning around people being where they're expected to be is even harder than it already is. So yeah, interesting social problems and really good. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars, something like that. It could have been better. It's one of those where I enjoyed it, but I feel like even the same author after 10 years more experience might improve on this book. So, but it was good. I enjoyed it. One of my favorites in this group was actually The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein. This one is set in Australia and on a boat to Australia from different directions. So we start out actually in England following a group of female convicts that are being transported to Australia. And we also are following a young girl from Tasmania who has been favored by a missionary lady and is being brought over to Australia to civilize her. Yeah. So it's kind of a early days of Australia narrative, with a lot of historical fiction elements. We're definitely seeing, the birth of Australian society and, various ways. Yeah, and I liked it. It wasn't too big for the number of pages, so I didn't feel like anything had to be rushed, which does tend to happen in some historical fiction. They try and take on too big a topic, and then they cram all of the American Revolution into 3 pages because they have to get back to their story. Can be done well, but can be really a mess. So anyway, it was really good. I enjoyed it. It's a bit dark and a bit heavy given the topics. There are some deaths, including deaths of characters that other authors might not have killed off. So yeah, it's heavy, but it's really well done. I also really liked There by Tommy Orange. This is a sort of a crime novel. It reminded me of What Came Before He Shot Her by Elizabeth George, in that we know that a crime has been committed pretty early on, and that we're sort of following all the bits and pieces that come together to make the crime happen. So getting the backstory for a known crime. And we're finding out more about the crime as well as we go on. So yeah, if you liked There, if you don't want to read the entire Inspector Lynley series by Elizabeth George, you might just read What Came Before He Shot Her. And you will probably really enjoy it, even without the backstory of Inspector Lynley, because it's not about the inspector. It's about this one kid and his life leading to the crime he commits. So, really good. So very similar to There, similar sort of thing. Just in There, we're following some Native American characters, and an interesting incident that happens. And it takes on questions like, what does it take to be Indian? Do you have to wear regalia and do the dances and, be in a drum circle and do all that stuff to be authentically Indian enough? Is it okay to just be who you actually normally are? Or are you not being Indian without those extra elements? And there's other bits of talking about the experience of Native Americans in society and in modern society, and the experience of young men growing up in modern society and what they face, and why things turn out the way they do sometimes. So it was really good. I enjoyed it. And I did read Wandering Stars last year. So this is my second Tommy Orange book. Last in this stack was The Siege of Burning Grass. This is by Premi Mohammed. I've been reading a trilogy by her, but this is one that my sister, not the one that's getting the stack, the other sister, that she sent down for me to read. It was really good. I was really confused though. So the guy on the cover, I was thinking, oh, it's just kind of edgy cover art. But then I'm not sure what the characters look like. And maybe one of the races of characters in the book looks like the character on the cover, like a bird in a suit. I didn't really even think about that till near the end of the book, and I was like, maybe they don't look like, hominid people. Maybe they look like something else. So Yeah, I might have to revisit this one sometime later and see if I still think that. Anyway, so that was kind of fun. It is about two groups of people, and I'll just use people loosely, because I don't know what species they actually are at this point. They're on a colony world, probably, in which there's been an ongoing war for generations, and they are trying to resolve the conflict. And maybe both sides are thinking in terms of genocide as the solution. It reminded me of the Drazi in Babylon 5, where the Drazi periodically they do this civil war thing where I think it's like every 17 Drazi years, they pull sashes out of a sack, and whoever's purple is purple Drazi, and whoever gets green is green Drazi, and then they try to annihilate each other until somebody wins, and then that's the top side going forward until the next one. But I digress into the Drazi because in the episode that introduces them in Babylon 5, they've picked their sashes, and now the one side is trying to get the humans on the station to help them annihilate the other side en masse, as a way of securing a peace. If there's no more of the other colored Drazi, then we've achieved peace. Reminds me of certain Middle Eastern conflicts, actually, just slightly. Not that I would think that science fiction authors are thinking about real world conflicts at all when writing their stories. Anyway, so they have this grand solution, and they're trying to not follow that approach, but maybe some of the actors involved in this maneuver are aiming for that. Anyway, it was really good. Sci-fi, but it felt more like a fantasy adventure, like a quest story. So it's not heavy on the science part of sci-fi. Like sci-fantasy is probably a good hybrid term for this one. All right, and then the rest of these are the rest of the print books that I finished in May, so that I can start June fresh. Yeah, at least as fresh as this gets us, because there's still those non-print books, but we'll get to those another video later. I do like chatting books, so I'm always happy to do videos where I just talk about the books I read. So this one, To Live by Yu Hua. This is a Maoist China story. So we have a young man, Fugui. I'm sure that's not how they say it. Anyway, Fugui. He is surviving the nationalist army in the Civil War. So before the Japanese invasion of China, that was slightly predating World War II, China had been in a civil war. Then Japan invaded China. China banded together to fight off Japan, and then went back to the Civil War. So there really was a long stretch, a lot longer than the history books I grew up with when I was way back in school would have suggested. Um, and this book really gets at that. We have a young man who he's born into the society around this Civil War prior to the Japanese invasion. Then we get the Japanese invasion. He survives that and manages to not just survive, but eventually have a wife and a child, and things seem to be okay. But as soon as he gets back on his feet from all of this horrible stuff that's happened, then the Maoist communist regime settles in, and everything that he's been able to get so far worked out is destroyed, basically. So classic modern Chinese historical fiction. I've read quite a few of them. It's not as bleak as it could be. It's not as bloody as it could be. A lot of the gross stuff happens off page, which is nice. I've read some that just wallow in those scenes to the point where if I wasn't reading them for something I couldn't DNF for, I would have probably put them down. This one's not that bad. It's elegantly written. It's a balanced enough story that it's not just traumatic. And there are a lot of choices that are being made. So it's not like some where they have no agency. There are points in this book where there are choices and the characters make choices and then live with the consequences of what they chose. A lot of the other books in this topic really emphasize how little choice people actually had, which is still true. You still get some of that in here too. That at some point, the stuff going on around you precludes your being able to make choices. So. Next we have The Doctor's House by Ann Beattie. Several people on BookTube have talked about Ann Beattie. So I had to at least try her. Similar author in some ways to Jane Hamilton and Carol Shields. But this time we have a sister and a brother, and her brother has an unhealthy interest in sexual relations that she has to deal with in some way. So it's a different topic. Now we're getting into more prurient stories. Beyond that, it wasn't memorable. I liked it well enough while I was reading it, enough to be like, yeah, anybody that really likes the style of writing of Shields and Hamilton might also like Ann Beattie. But for me, it wasn't as relatable. And maybe this is where my getting more and more asexual leaning as I've gotten older. Like the topic may just not appeal as much. So anyway, it wasn't bad. I do have at least one, maybe a couple more Ann Beattie novels. So I will read more of hers. Maybe it's just this one that I just didn't vibe with. But yeah, it wasn't bad, just not a favorite. I did really like Trust by Hernan Diaz. Let's see if I can get it to not do the... So I did really like Trust by Hernan Diaz. This one is one that, and it wasn't a 5-star. It dragged a bit in places. But it's dealing with a businessman and the business world and finance and like the movers and shakers of the economy. It's maybe too clever for its own good, because we start out, we have the story, and then we get the story again, sort of, from a different perspective, from a different source. And this is done 4 times. There's 4 different narratives for this businessman and his wife and their relationship and what happens to her and why. And, who is guilty about what, and so 4 different narratives, same people, probably the truth is somewhere in between all of those. So I like the concept, but it was a little more shtick than storytelling for me. But I still liked it. It was like 4.5 stars for me. So it's still good. Just I could have done with a little bit more storytelling and a little bit less cleverness. Right. We have The Other Misses by Mary Kubica. A thriller. So we have a murder. And we have a conundrum in which it seems as if this housewife, this middle-aged, middle-class woman, is the best culprit for a murder. But she can't possibly be the murderer. It doesn't make sense. But there's forensics that says that maybe she is. And it's a fun one. I caught on to what was going on about halfway through. But I also have a psychology degree, which is as much of a hint as I'm going to give. And I liked how this one resolved. I'm not sure nowadays if the disorder that is involved is believed to actually work like that, but at the time, it certainly works. And really, it's one of those disorders. There aren't that many cases of it. 2020, so it's not that far ago. It probably exists, but maybe it doesn't, and there's not enough statistics to do much with it. If you need a book with a psychological disorder and a thriller, this would be a good one. Yeah. Next up, we have Lean Your Loneliness Slowly Against Mine by Clara Weberg, which I just love the title. So in this book, Raquel has a talent for mathematics and goes to Oslo, where she meets her professor Jacob, a brilliant older man. Jacob is working on a novel about Sofia Kovalevskaya, the first woman to become a professor in mathematics. And we're basically going back and forth between Raquel's experience and this historical mathematician's experience. And they're kind of parallel stories with similarities and differences that, come along with the two stories. You do not have to be into mathematics for it to make sense. However, if you have a secret penchant for mathematics, especially advanced college mathematics, you might like this book in particular because it name drops all sorts of concepts that you might recognize. Last but not least, I kind of finished A Court of Wings and Ruin earlier, but then I went back to do the next book and realized that I was lost. Like, I must have fallen asleep for part of the last third of this book. So I'm now actually done with it. I finished the last half of it. I reread so that I actually know what happened. And I actually moved on to the next one already too, for June. So almost done with the first series of Sarah J. Maas books. Yay! So anyway, that gets us caught up to May. Those are the print books that I've finished in May, along with the ones from the previous sets of 10 that I already did videos for May. So we do need to rock through the April books as well. So I will grab that box and we'll just kind of stroll through them and just see what needs to be said about them, because they're going away maybe tomorrow and they might not be back for a while. So if I wanted to say something about them, I probably should before the box goes away. All right. So I don't need to go through all of these because some of them I know I talked about already, but just flip through them quickly, see what we've got. I have A Constellation of Vital Phenomena by Anthony Mara. I don't really remember much about it a month later. I remember that it was not as good as I was expecting it to be after all the hype. Yeah, it was a New York Times Notable Book of the Year, Washington Post Top 10 Book of the Year, National Book Awards long list. I was expecting great things, and I think maybe I was expecting too much from it. It's set in Chechnya, and I'm always interested in books set in Chechnya, and I think that's the part that I'm starting to remember now. Oh yeah, this is the one where I was reading about Chechnya during that Russian invasion of Chechnya. So so I enjoyed that part, but I still felt like it could have been so much more. And probably I just let the hype overhype it, and it was probably fine. An Exact Replica of a Figment of My Imagination by Elizabeth McCracken. This is a memoir about the author's experience with having a stillbirth that would have required basically an abortion to remove the decaying fetus in a place where she couldn't have that procedure done, and had to carry the deceased fetus to term. So it's heavy, definitely something that women face in the current day, and especially in the US, where women's rights have been shrinking lately. So important book, interesting perspective. I'm so glad that I'm no longer part of that reproducing population. Giant's House, also by Elizabeth McCracken. This one is about giantism. It was really good. It's not a disorder that I knew much about before reading that book, so that was fun. Um, this is a buddy read, Luster, a novel by Raven Leilani that I buddy read with Dee Dee. The Virtues of Books is her channel. It was a weird book, but I think we both enjoyed it. Just it was a ride. It was different. Um, Life of Pi by Jan Martel. Yes, it really is about a boy and a tiger on a boat. The setup for that is bizarre. And the bits that are based on true story, that's totally bonkers. It's not nonfiction, but it is inspired by real life stuff. Anyway, different. Not sure I liked it, but it was an experience worth having. The City by China Mieville, probably one of my favorites for April. Still looking back after a month of hindsight. I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of China Mieville's books because this was really good. Magical realism, um, in some ways similar to Exit West, in that we have a different spatial arrangement of people in the city. Um, it's like two superimposed cities in this one. Yeah, and I definitely am hoping that Nieville has other books set in this world, because now that I kind of have an idea what's going on, now I want more stories set in it to see if it works like that. I did not like Hamlet Revenge by Michael Innes. This is classic crime fiction. It was boring. It's very dry. And one of those literary crime novels in which everything is in a complete sentence and correct grammar, and there's really not much pacing to be had. It's all very plodding and boring and correct. Yeah. I really liked World and Town by Gish Jen. Gish Jen has a book that's been on the prize lists for things lately. So I will be reading more of her books. This one is about a Cambodian lady living in the U.S. And a immigrant family that moves in nearby her in the same small town, that she becomes involved in, all of their family drama. So it gets into the immigrant experiences in the United States, and how the stuff that happened to this family before they left their originating country to come to the United States doesn't just vanish because they're here. That they still have to deal with all of that, even though they have, made it out and they're here, and nobody in their small town has any idea what they've been through to get to their little house in this little town. So I like this one. Definitely recommend World and Town by Gish Jen. My definite favorite for April was Who They Was by Gabriel Krautze, a semi-autobiographical novel about a young man who unapologetically is both a successful and rather vicious gangster and a literature student at the university in London. And it really brings certain works of literature to a different light, because of the context of this guy's life as a gangster.
Yeah, what? Hi. Are you okay? Yeah, do I need to dose you? Maybe? You okay?
Are you bored? You are. Okay. All right. So out of April, I think China Mieville, the city and the city, Gishjun, World and Town, Who They Was by Gabriel Krautze, and maybe no. I think those are my top 3 for April, which I may have said in the video already, but in benefit of hindsight, those are definitely the top for April out of the print books. I also finished The Orphan Master's Son in April by Adam Johnson. This one was good. Set in North Korea. So a different setting from what I usually am reading in East Asia. And a really interesting perspective because North Korea is really different. So I do recommend it. It would be my 4th choice. It would be 4th place for April. We have Sisterland by Curtis Sittenfeld, in which we have a pair of sisters that maybe are slightly psychic. One of them has rejected that identity and the other has embraced it and has made money off of it. And they're dealing with an issue where they're the one that's embraced the psychicness doesn't really have as much of a feeling about this thing, but the one that's rejected being psychic has been having maybe psychic episodes around this issue and is bringing them together to deal with it. Not really my sort of thing, but it was okay. We have Purity by Jonathan Franzen, which I've started and not finished multiple times ever since I got it. And I finally finished it, and it was okay. I went in a totally different direction than it seemed at the beginning. Climate fiction and yeah, bit different. I would recommend it more than I thought I would. But the beginning is awfully slow. I had a hard time getting into it, which is why it took so long to finish it. And then we have Madam by Phoebe Wynn. This one is about a young woman who takes a job teaching at a all-girls school that turns out to be a bit problematic. And then, of course, The Witcher, Baptism of Fire, and I did finish the one after this one as well, Tower of Contempt. I think so. So anyway, I'm on to whatever book 5, I think. But it depends on the numbering system. Anyway, I will be eventually getting back to Witcher. But I think the Seriously Series book club that's reading The Witcher has been on pause for various things, for Kooky, and now for a new event in June that I think will be announced this weekend. Maybe. By the time you're watching this, you may have seen the kickoff for a readathon called Gay Shit or something along those lines. I think that's what he's calling it. Stay tuned for more information about a readathon from Coda that is very much gay themed and involves watch-alongs and other stuff that I am not privy to. I am not a host for it. but I've heard things. It sounds like it could be a lot of fun once it's ready. Coda was one of the two organizing principles around the Kooky Mayhem readathon that just ended at the end of May, and was trying to dive directly from that into hosting a brand new readathon, month long and rather involved. Not a surprise, it's taking a little longer to launch the new readathon. So if you were expecting a gay shit readathon and are waiting, um, yeah, as far as I know, it's still coming. If you have access to the discords that are Coda's or the, yeah, probably just Coda's readathon. So if you have access to Coda through Coda's Discord, he does post comments on there. So if you are in Coda's Discord, watch there for updates on what's going on with that. As far as I know, as of what I heard earlier tonight, it's still happening. It just hasn't started yet. So read the books that you've got lined up for June, and hopefully we'll get a readathon to go with them soon. I'm also doing Tar, the Amazing Readathon, and the Tarot Readathon, both of which are teams-based readathons. Mostly I'm focused on Tar, but I'm also doing Tarot, just not checking in every day on that so far. And now that I've gotten this recording done, I can focus on reading a little bit more. So, all right. Well, that actually didn't take as long as I was expecting. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm sure that the video glitched a few times. We're going with it. This is the kind of video that you put on while doing dishes or whatever anyway, I would imagine. Because it's really just me chatting about the books and holding them up randomly. And yeah. If you have any questions about any of the books that I talked about in this video, put that in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you have recommendations based on what I've talked about in this video, throw those in the comments as well. And if you are in Team Torchwood or in Team Wands, those are my teams for Tar and Tarot. Hi, fellow teammates. Everybody else, happy reading. And I will catch you in the next video, which will probably be a sort of a TBR. So probably very soon. In the meantime, happy reading. Bye, guys.